So I'm Gavin Lane. I'm Deputy President of the CLA, and we represent about 26,000 odd landowners, really, who manage around 10 million acres between them in England and Wales. There's a separate organisation in Scotland, and that's about 60% of the farmed land of those two countries. What I thought I'd do, and forgive me if a lot of this is on repeat, but I thought I'd talk a little bit about where we are with emissions in agriculture, and that is partly a repeat of some of what Jim has said, how we think we can reduce them, and what we're trying to promote amongst our members and what our members think, the role of technology, and obviously probably more so the government's support for the sector. And I thought I'd finish by just looking at one of examples of an estate that is a member of ours. So, looking probably back at Jim's graph, it's a very, very disappointing and frustrating set of affairs. I'm not a big fan of stats generally, and because you tend to take them out of context. And I think the first thing to mention is the agricultural inventory only includes farming-related emissions. So some of what we've talked about in terms of energy production on farm and transport and the reduction of emissions in transport, all of that goes against separate inventories. So what we're talking about here is just agriculture. And frankly, the case really since the 90s has been one that somebody referred to as the band playing on in the Titanic versus iceberg scenario, i.e. we haven't done an awful lot and minimum progress in the last 15 years. So I think where I would differ from Jim's perspective is that because farming businesses are small and medium-sized enterprises and there's an awful lot of them, decarbonising agriculture, we think, is going to have to involve a lot of actions, each with small savings. And for each of our members, the route towards net zero will be unique. But there you can see, as Jim's pointed out, methane and nitrous oxides, so nitrous oxide from artificial fertiliser use, methane from livestock, from red meat production, both stubbornly staying where they are. So, as we've seen from others, increased productivity, producing more output using less inputs, and we know that can be done by better soil health, companion cropping, cover cropping, some of the other things that our members are doing. A restructure of the livestock sector, I think it's not just about reducing red meat consumption. I think that's unlikely. I don't think any government has got the appetite to take on and force and incentivise diet change right at the moment. Whether that changes, I don't know, but I can't see it happening very soon. But we can restructure the livestock sector, and we can move to more mixed farming systems, less intensive grazing, more extensive grazing. New tech, we've been there. We know where we are, but I'd reiterate precision farming techniques taking over, AD, use of waste heat, all of those things can help. And of course, the ability for our soils to sequester carbon is really important, and we can do that whilst producing food. But all of this adds up to the idea that we need to free up, as Jim said, free up some land for carbon sequestration, which may involve wood planting. That doesn't have to be solely as forestry. It can be as wood pasture, which we've seen more of, where you can actually graze animals with the trees. But a lot of that sort of stuff is going to have to be done. Where does tech come in? Well, the stubborn decarbonation challenges are there. We need to really focus on how we suppress methane production within the red meat, within livestock in the red meat sector. And that, I think, can only really be done by tech. And we're sure that with more research, more tech, more money going into the tech side, we can see methane suppressing additives and various other techniques to deal with that. We've talked about no-till, min-till in arable systems, making sure that the soil isn't left exposed, putting the next crop straight into the stubble, very efficient, uses a lot less diesel. We've got the need for better data. I bang on about this to DEFRA the whole time I'm in the room with them. We have seen other countries really go ahead of us in this. If you go to Northern Ireland or you go to Australia, you'll see what's capable. LiDAR assessments of sequestration and emissions rate almost now as live data. It is possible. There's much better ways of gathering data, and we need it at a granular level on our farms. And then just to say, the overcoming of the geographical specialisation of farming, we obviously know about what's happening in the River Wye with the intensification of the poultry units there. That happened for a reason, for a very good reason, in the fact that it produced economies of scale. But I think at the time people underestimated quite what the environmental impact was going to be. And we've got to find a way of trying to prevent those sorts of unintended consequences by maybe spreading out our production of livestock over a wider area of the country, and also thinking more about how we deal with livestock manures, especially poultry litter, and how we might be able to transport it in the future. How can government support the sector? Well, we have got an environmental land management scheme. It has come out of the back of Brexit and having to make our own agricultural bill and then agricultural act. I think I'm pretty positive about a lot of what's going on there, and the sustainable farming incentive definitely incentivizes good farming practices that we've talked at on a more regenerative level. However, we do need to see more. We need to see better investment in technology and equipment. It's coming about, but it's still very expensive, and we need to think about how we measure, as I've said, how we collect data on farm, right on farm level emissions and sequestration. So just to finish, because I know that we're short of time, this is this is at the top end of our membership, both in terms of size and in terms of capital investment. But Johnny Wake at Cortina Hall Farms has spent a lot of time doing this. He started off by getting a company called Ecometric involved, who combined soil sampling, remote sensing, and AI to really start to generate robust carbon emissions and sequestration estimates. So they're still estimates, but they're about as good as you can possibly get. And on the basis of that, he knew where to focus reducing his emissions. His poultry units, which were obviously one area where he knew that the ammonium emissions and the poultry litter was a problem, he introduced scrubbing techniques for the ammonia and heat recovery, and he also has enough arable land to make sure that he spreads most of his poultry litter on that as well effectively. He's introduced wood pasture, which I talked about, the idea of grazing between trees, which is really important, and that's all been created by the countryside stewardship grants on his estate. And he's also had the time and money to invest in PV, batteries, and some 16 ground source heat pumps over the estate, as well as another really important area in this, which is rainwater harvesting. I think we underestimate the need for water within agriculture and just how important it's going to be in the future. We are going to run out of water. Thank you very much.